Were you ever that 1 in 1,000,000? If so, what's your story? I was 22, stuck at some random train station at 11:47 p.m. after missing the last bus home. It was freezing cold, maybe 20 degrees, and I was the only person on the platform except for this one guy about 30 feet away from me. He kept pacing back and forth near the edge, muttering stuff I couldn't make out. What really caught my attention was that he wasn't wearing a coat. It was literally freezing, and this dude was in just a thin sweater and jeans, acting like the cold didn't exist. I tried to mind my own business, but something felt really wrong. He kept walking closer and closer to the tracks, then backing away, then walking closer again. Every few minutes, he'd lean over the edge and stare down the tunnel like he was measuring something. That's when it hit me. This guy wasn't waiting for a train to get home. He was waiting for a train for a completely different reason. My stomach dropped. I'd never been in a situation like this before. Do you call someone? Do you walk away? Do you say something? I had no clue what the right move was, but I knew I couldn't just stand there and watch. So I walked over, trying to act casual, and said, "Hey man, do you know when the next train comes? I'm trying to get home and I have no idea what I'm doing." He barely looked at me, just shrugged and kept staring down the tracks. I could see his hands were shaking, and not just from the cold. I kept talking, asking him random stuff. "Where'd you get those shoes? Man, this weather is crazy, right? Have you been waiting long?" Anything to keep him distracted from whatever he was thinking about. Finally, I said, "Dude, it's way too cold to be standing out here. Want to grab some coffee? There's a 24-hour place across the street. I'll pay." He looked at me for the first time, really looked at me, like he was trying to figure out if I was serious. Then he just nodded, like he had nothing left to lose anyway. We walked to this little diner that smelled like old grease and coffee that had been sitting for hours. I bought us both coffee and some stale donuts, and we sat in this booth by the window. That's when he started talking. His name was Kevin. He'd lost his job on Monday, laid off after 8 years with the company. His wife had left him on Wednesday, took their kid and moved in with her sister 3 states away. He'd been served divorce papers on Friday, all in 1 week. Everything he'd built for the last decade, gone. He told me he'd been sitting in his empty apartment all day, thinking about how nobody would even notice if he disappeared. His parents lived in Arizona, and they talked maybe twice a year. His friends were all work friends who'd probably forget about him in a month. He said the only reason he came to the train station was because he couldn't figure out any other way to make the pain stop. I just listened. I didn't try to give him advice or tell him everything would be fine. I just sat there and let him talk for 3 hours straight about his marriage, his job, how he felt like he'd wasted his whole life. When the sun started coming up, I gave him my phone number and said, "Look, I don't know you, but if you ever need someone to talk to, just call me. No questions asked. Even if it's 3 a.m. and you're having the worst day of your life, call me." He looked at the napkin I'd written my number on like it was the weirdest thing anyone had ever given him. Then he put it in his wallet. We went our separate ways. I honestly didn't know if I'd ever hear from him again, but I hoped he'd be okay. 2 weeks later, my phone rang at 2 a.m. It was Kevin. He'd been having a rough night and remembered what I said. We talked for an hour. He called me a few more times over the next couple months, usually when things got really bad. Eventually, the calls became less frequent, but we stayed in touch. He got a new job, started seeing a therapist, slowly put his life back together. 3 years later, I got a wedding invitation in the mail. Kevin was getting married to someone he'd met at a grief support group. Inside the invitation was a handwritten note. "You saved my life that night at the train station. Now I get to marry the love of my life because you didn't walk away when you could have. Thank you for showing me that strangers can care about each other." I went to the wedding. It was beautiful.